Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
The Apartment, a film that came out in 1960, just so happened to be the same year that Ocean's 11, the original Ocean's 11, came out, which is a movie that I did not like at all. But this one, I did love quite a bit, and as an example, this one shows that, movies, despite being made a long time ago, in the 60s, 80 years ago, that's so long, 80 years? Is that 80 years, right? 40, 50, 60 years. 62 years ago. So my math was off. 62 years ago. Can still be great, can still hold up. And can be very entertaining, unlike Ocean's 11, the original. So The Apartment, this one written and directed by Billy Wilder. This one starring Jack Lemmon, Shirley MacLaine. A movie that I had heard recommended multiple times fairly recently. And it's a movie that not anywhere streamable except for on Tubi. Thankfully, Tubi is the kind of the last place you see a lot of movies that aren't anywhere. Like a lot of obscure movies I find on Tubi, a lot of especially obscure horror movies are on Tubi. So the movie did get broken up into ad breaks, which is kind of a bummer. I do not like that aspect of it, but the fact that I got to watch The Apartment without having to pay anything was great. Although I would purchase this movie, I think it costs like $15, so I would purchase it if it was like $10 or $5. But a great watch, regardless. Kind of a romantic comedy. You have an interesting story. Jack Lemmon plays this guy who is working just a regular job in this insurance company. I think it's a Manhattan insurance clerk, and his name is Baxter. He works at this place, and he uses his apartment in order to climb the ladder, as it were. He loans the key to his apartment out to different department heads for them to use his apartment as a place to hook up with their, basically the woman that they're cheating on their wife with. So it's become like this place for all of these department heads to cheat on their wives, to bring their girlfriends, to hang out and get drunk and party. So all of Baxter's neighbors in this apartment building think that he's like this ladies' man, this party animal, because they're always seeing women come in, and they're always seeing him throw away tons of empty bottles of liquor, thinking that they're all Baxter's, but he's not. His life is basically hell, because his house, he's having to deal with the logistics and the planning and the scheduling to make sure that people that people aren't showing up to his apartment when somebody else is using it, when some other department head's using it, and all in the hopes that they put in a good word for Baxter to move up in this company. So already an interesting story, right? I've never seen a story where somebody's loaning out their apartment. There's a scene where he's sick, and first off, it's kind of crazy to see somebody sick and then going to work, and then all of the things that he's doing while sick in an era of a pandemic where people are being forced to go to work while sick now with a virus that's killing, has killed over 800,000 people in the United States so far. But you see Baxter showing up to work sick. You see him wanting to go home after work and just rest and get well. But the people that he's been loaning out his apartment to, they need the apartment. They need it. So his life is pretty much, even if he's asleep and somebody calls and they pick somebody up at a bar and they want to use his apartment that night, he has to leave his apartment to get dressed out of a night's sleep, leave his apartment while this person is, cheating on their wife. It is just a hell. I would hate that so much. I would hate that so much. But this is how he's trying to move up, and it works. Eventually, it starts working. He gets he gets one promotion, and he's feeling all good, despite the fact that he's sick. And he's like, there's this woman that runs the elevator, and he's got a crush on her, and he wants to ask her out. They kind of come to an agreement where he ends up getting, for his promotion from the big boss guy who found out that he's got this apartment for these people to use to cheat on their wives with. He's like, okay, well, I want to cheat on my wife too, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you these tickets to a musical, and you can go out to this musical with a date or whatever, and I will use your apartment while you're gone, despite the fact that he's sick. But it's like that rush of adrenaline and endorphins really kind of made him feel better and kind of put a pep in his step, and so much so that he asked the elevator woman to go on this thing, and she's like hesitant. She's like, I got these plans with an ex that I kind of still hung up on, and he like convinces her. It's like, here, listen. She's like, well, if I get done, I'll meet you there. How about this? I'll go have this meeting with this person, and then afterwards I'll meet you at the thing. Obviously, he gets stuck. He gets stood up. The Many Faces is an ongoing abstract ink portrait series that I started many years ago. I release a new face every day, but go to inspireddisorder.com to check them out. So many available. But as a listener to The Ray Taylor Show, you can save 10% when you use coupon code INSPIRED when you check out. So go to inspireddisorder.com/TMF, that stands for The Many Faces. Go check them out, browse the entire collection, and when you decide on a piece, or maybe multiple pieces, make sure you use coupon code INSPIRED when you check out, and you'll save 10%. As a big thank you for checking out my work, for collecting my work, and for listening to The Ray Taylor Show. And with that said, let's get back to the show. But it comes to a point where he finds out that this elevator girl is the guy that she wants to see is his boss. Like, he's the one that wants to use his apartment with this elevator girl, and he doesn't even know it. And of course, it's a situation, as it always is, where you have married dudes who have side pieces. They are constantly stringing along the side piece, telling them that they will leave their wife and kids for them, just to kind of keep them on the leash. And that is what is happening with this elevator girl. But then there's this thing happens where she finds out from like his secretary or whatever that he's never going to leave his wife at this like holiday party, and she decides to try and kill herself. So Baxter got stood up at this play. She never showed up. He ends up going to a bar, meeting somebody at the bar, and then taking her back to his place because he assumes that his boss is done with his apartment for him to go. And he shows up, and as he's like kind of getting everything ready, cleaning up, he sees that she's passed out on his bed while he's got this other chick in the other room. And his doctor, his neighbor, his right next door is a doctor, and he finds out. So he finds that she's not just sleeping; that he finds the empty sleeping pill bottle, and he sees that she took all these sleeping pills. So it's like this crazy scene where he's trying to get the chick that he found at the bar, who she's cheating on her husband too. He's trying to get her out. He's trying to get the doctor in to try and save her life. So there's this whole scene of him, the doctor kind of reviving her, and then Baxter has to stay with her. And this is where Baxter, like, he kind of realized, he found out that she was the person that his boss was into before. So he was kind of like, oh, this is great. But she doesn't know that apartment is Baxter's yet. So it's this kind of like, it's just a great story, great like thing. And then she kind of comes to, and then Baxter has this story where he tried to kill himself, like in relation to her, where they're both kind of these damaged people that had at different times had wanted to kill each other, had killed themselves. And his story is about how he got this gun, but he ended up shooting himself in the knee, and now his knee hurts all the time. He still has the gun. But it's like this great scene where you see him trying to, relate to her and just trying to keep her up, trying to keep her from going anywhere, because he also is still trying to protect his boss because he wants to still move up. But just like this great story, just like great performances. Jack Lemmon, so good as like this kind of not Weasley, but like this clearly like kind of a guy who gets taken advantage of all the time, obviously, from all these people. Really doesn't have any kind of self-respect, doesn't have a lot of confidence necessarily. But they share this moment. The doctor helps him out. And they kind of bond. She realizes throughout this whole thing that the apartment that her man was using is owned by Baxter, and she's like, it's like confusing at first. So good, just how the revelations and the kind of as these characters get more information and learn more things. It's just great. And then Baxter finally gets his main job. He gets he becomes like a partner or whatever. And the guy had to leave, like stops because of the whole suicide thing. He stops seeing her. But then finds out, like, word spreads, and his wife finds out that he's cheating on her because he fires. It's like all these things. I don't want to go beat by beat. And I've Swiss cheese this whole thing. I'm like picking things out of random situations. Just so good. There's also this great scene where she like finds out that Baxter is the guy for her. That she's finally over this other guy. And she realizes, there's even a scene where she's like, why couldn't I just meet somebody like you? Right? Which I've heard too many times. I have heard women say, I wish I could have met somebody nice like you. It's like, motherfucker, I am here. I am right fucking here. And I'm sure that's what he is saying when she says that. But she finally comes to the realization that Baxter actually cares about her as a person. Like, he treats her like a person. They play this card game, and it's like this whole thing about we need to finish playing this card game. But it's like this scene where she realizes that Baxter is the right guy for her. Right? That she doesn't want to be strung around by this douchebag anymore, that she wants somebody that actually cares about her, that's not like treating her like some side piece. And it's this great scene where she's running, and you hear this pop. It's like New Year's Eve. Or is it Christmas? I think it's New Year's Eve. Because there's champagne. So on like New Year's Eve, she's supposed to be on this date. She leaves the date. She leaves that dude. And she runs. Because at this point, Baxter refused to give his key to the head boss. Once he got the partnership, he's like, I'm done. After all of the thing exploded with her ODing in his apartment and all that nonsense and all that mess, like the boss guy got rid of his own key, and now he's asking to borrow Baxter, and Baxter's like, I'm not going to do this anymore. Join Inspired Disorder Plus today. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus to join. Membership includes members-only discounts and deals. You get access to the Ray Taylor Show completely ad-free, as well as bonus episodes. You get access to the complete live painting archive. You also get access to every single podcast ever produced by Inspired Disorder, hosted by Ray Taylor. You get access to Ray Taylor's personal blog, as well as the opportunity to ask me any questions. So if you want to start a podcast, you're into art, ask me anything. And so many more things are being added every day to Inspire Disorder Plus. So sign up today, become a member, head on over to inspiredisorder.com/plus and become an Inspire Disorder Plus member today. And he ends up, instead of giving him the key to his apartment, he ends up giving him a key to like their private clubhouse or whatever that the bigwigs of this company get to use. And because of that, basically he gets fired. Basically, that's him quitting, because that's the only reason he has that job is for this apartment for them to use. And now he's not doing it, so he can just go kick rocks, which he's all excited. He's like, finally, I'm free from all this. And he's like, I'm going to leave. So he's like packing up his entire apartment. Everything's in boxes. New Year's. He's kind of stoked for this new chapter in his life. And then she's running up, like she's kind of going to his apartment. It's that romantic comedy scene where, you know, the person realizes who the right person is for them, and they're running to go be with that person. And she gets to the floor of his apartment, and while she's down the hall of the apartment, she hears this bang. And of course, there's the story from before where he talked about wanting to kill himself with a gun and accidentally shooting himself in the knee. And as the viewer, you remember that story. So, but it doesn't really make sense necessarily because because he seems excited about this new step in his life. But she gets to the door and she's banging on the door. It's like, Baxter, open the door. And of course, he opens the door and it's champagne bottle in hand, just oozing bubbles. So clearly the explosion, was the cork and not a gun. But kind of this great moment where you know her character is like, I'm too late. Like, he killed himself because I was so hooked on this guy who was never going to be with me, who's never going to leave his wife and kids unless he got like called out by his secretary that he let go. Like, it's too late. It's like I fucked up. And it could have easily been, this movie could have easily, with just a couple, just rewritten slightly different, this could have been a tragedy. This could have been her showing up to his door and him just dead inside. But it was a good ending, and I appreciated the ending. And at the end of this movie, I had the biggest smile on my face because it was just like, you know, it's an interesting romantic comedy. It's an interesting story, something you just don't hear of people doing anymore. I'm sure people have apartments that they use for cheating, but I don't think they're using somebody's apartment that they work. Maybe they are. It'd be interesting to know if there's any modern day situations that are similar to this, where people have like this apartment that they all share to cheat on all their wives with. But it just seems like cheating on your wife was something that happened a lot more openly back in the 60s. You know, when you could drink at work, when you could openly drink at work, openly having affairs with your wife, who at that point was, you know, not allowed to work, not really allowed to do anything. I really enjoyed this movie. I was surprised. I was entertained. It was so much fun. Jack Lemmon is such a great, like, plays this character perfectly. It's 2 hours and 5 minutes long, but still, it felt like it flew by. Well written, well performed. Shirley MacLaine is adorable. Like, I'd love to see more. She was great in it as well, but she's like very attractive, and very good. It was just really great. I wonder. No, wait. Was that Shirley MacLaine? Was that? Yeah, Frank Kubelik, Mrs. Kubelik. Super interesting name. Cece Baxter is Jack Lemmon. Fran Kubelik is Shirley MacLaine. The boss guy, Jeff D. Sheldrake, played by Fred McRury. And then some of the other guys that use the apartment. Joe Dobbish. Dr. Dreyfus was the neighbor. Anyway, really fun movie. Really great. I really enjoyed it. Highly recommend it. Check it out on Tubi or wherever. If you ever see it streaming, 1960s, The Apartment. It is a fun, great romantic comedy that holds up. I would say holds up, despite the fact of the toxic, but the toxic masculinity and all of that stuff is not a positive. Like, those guys are all assholes, and Baxter's not really. He's definitely allowing it to happen. He's definitely enabling their behavior, but he's doing so. It's like the most interesting way I've seen somebody try to move up the ladder, the corporate ladder, by doing that. But yeah, great movie overall. Highly recommend checking it out. The Apartment. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.